Have you ever stared at one last message on your phone, reading it over and over, because part of you still hopes it might change? This is my story in the quiet winter of Denmark. One text ended everything, yet it also started something new. The journey of learning to listen, speak, and feel again in English. Not through lessons or grammar books, but through loneliness, broken sentences, and a voice I thought I had lost. The text that broke the silence. It happened on a Sunday morning in Copenhagen. The sky was gray, quiet, almost too quiet. My phone lit up, one short message, just 7 words. No punctuation, no warmth. But somehow it made more noise than a thunderstorm. I remember staring at it for a long time. Like maybe if I looked hard enough, I could find a different meaning hiding between the lines. But there wasn't. It was the end, short, sharp, and untranslatable. For weeks I didn't open my mouth. Not in English, not in Danish, not even in my own language. When people talked to me, I just nodded, pretending I understood. I wasn't really afraid of people, I was afraid of my own voice. Felt broken. When you lose someone, you also lose the rhythm of your days. You lose the small sentences that used to make sense. My mornings in Denmark suddenly felt foreign, even though I had lived here for years. The coffee tasted different. The air felt heavier. The English songs I used to love now sounded like noise. One night, I replayed that message again. Not the words, but the silence after them. That's when I realized something strange. The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting for me to fill it with something new. So I started small. I whispered the message aloud in English. I tried to understand how it sounded, not just how it hurt. I repeated it slowly like a listening exercise. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix the grammar. I was trying to fix me. It's funny, isn't it? Sometimes the first step to learning a language again is just breathing between the words. Letting your pain teach your tongue how to move again. That day I didn't reply to the message. But I did say something to myself out loud in English. I'm still here. I'm still learning. And somehow that felt like the real beginning. When English feels like a wall, there's a strange loneliness that comes with living in a country where you understand almost everything, but not enough. That was me, walking through Copenhagen with my earbuds in, pretending to listen to music just so no one would talk to me. Because every time someone did, my brain froze like an old laptop. You know that feeling? When you know the words but your tongue refuses to cooperate. When you can hear English perfectly fine in your room but outside, it feels like everyone's talking through fog. That was my daily life. In the grocery store, people would ask, "Do you need a bag?" Simple question. But my brain turned it into an exam. I'd panic, nod too fast, say yes I bag need. And then spend the next 5 minutes replaying the sentence in my head, wishing I could disappear into the shelves of rye bread. Here's what no one tells you about learning English abroad. It's not the grammar that breaks you, it's the moments. The ones that remind you you're not fluent enough to belong. It's the laughter you don't understand. The jokes that pass by like a bus you just missed. I started avoiding conversations. My Danish friends spoke English so fast it felt like chasing a train with no brakes. And the more I avoided speaking, the harder it became. My brain built a wall. One made of fear, embarrassment, and the belief that I'll never sound natural. Then one night I read something that stuck with me. The wall you hit is often the one you built. It made me think. Maybe my problem wasn't that I couldn't speak English. It was that I had stopped trusting myself to so I began a new routine. Every morning before leaving my apartment, I'd look in the mirror and say one English sentence aloud. Something small, something real. I'm okay today. I'm learning slowly. I can try again. And little by little, the wall began to crack. Not because I suddenly became fluent, but because I stopped caring about sounding perfect. That's the thing about language. It's not just about words. It's about permission. The permission to be clumsy, to sound strange, to exist in another language and still call it home. Talking to myself in English started as a joke. One morning while washing dishes, I said to myself, "Good morning, sunshine." The pan didn't answer, but it also didn't judge me. So I kept talking. To the mirror, to the kettle, to the plants on my windowsill. I became my own English-speaking roommate, slightly weird, but surprisingly comforting. At first, it felt ridiculous. I'd forget words, mix tenses, and laugh at myself mid-sentence. But slowly, something began to change. My voice, the one that had been silent since that message, started sounding alive again. Not fluent, not fancy, but real. Here's the secret no one tells you. Talking to yourself in English is not madness. It's medicine. It trains your ears, your mouth, and your courage all at once. Scientists call it private speech. Psychologists say it helps the brain process emotions and learn faster. But to me, it just felt like therapy I didn't have to pay for. Sometimes I pretend to host a podcast. Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm learning how to make sense of my life. One awkward sentence at a time. Other times I'd talk like I was comforting a friend. It's okay. You're still healing. You're still learning. The beautiful part? English stopped being just a skill. It became a space, a safe one where I could rebuild myself from the inside out. Because when you speak a language that isn't your own, you get to rewrite the story of who you are. I started recording my voice on my phone, just to listen back. At first it was cringy. Who enjoys hearing their own accent? But soon I began to notice small victories. A smoother rhythm here, a confident tone there. My pronunciation wasn't perfect, but my heart was louder. And maybe that's what matters most. Because when you speak to yourself kindly, in any language, your brain listens. So if you ever feel stuck, try it. Talk to your fridge, your reflection, your shadow. Say something in English, even if it's broken. Broken words can still build strong people. The coffee shop test. There's a tiny cafe near Norrport Station where the smell of roasted beans could wake the dead. I used to walk past it every morning but never dared to go in. Ordering coffee meant speaking English, and speaking English meant risking embarrassment. My fear wasn't about grammar. It was about being seen. One day, after another quiet morning of talking only to my kettle, I decided to take the test. I walked into that cafe like someone entering a battlefield. Heart pounding, palms sweaty, brain rehearsing. "One latte, please." Just 6 words. 6 terrifying words. The barista looked up with a bright smile. "Hi there. What can I get for you?" And that's when my brain betrayed me. Instead of saying, "One latte, please," I blurted out, "One life, please." He blinked. then laughed. Not in a cruel way, just surprised. A life? That's a big order, he said, still smiling. I turned red. But something unexpected happened. I laughed too. And just like that, the fear cracked open. The tension melted. We both laughed again, and I finally said, "Sorry, I meant a latte. But maybe life too if it's on the menu." He handed me the cup a few minutes later and said, "Here you go, one latte, one life. Both hot." That's how I learned one of the most beautiful truths about learning English. Mistakes aren't failures, they're openings. They turn strangers into people. They turn awkwardness into connection. From that day on, I started using every cafe, supermarket, and bakery as my classroom. Ordering food, asking directions, making small talk. Every sentence became a mini victory. My voice shook, my accent slipped, but I didn't hide anymore. Science actually backs this up. Our brains learn languages faster through emotionally charged experiences. Laughter, embarrassment, even small kindnesses help memory stick better than drills or flashcards ever could. That silly moment in the cafe wasn't just about a latte. It was about learning that communication is not perfection, it's courage with caffeine. And honestly, that first sip tasted like freedom. When words become feelings. Here's something I never expected. Learning English didn't just change the way I spoke, it changed the way I felt. Before Denmark, English was just a tool. Vocabulary lists, grammar rules, listening exercises. But after that heartbreak, English became my emotional language. A bridge between who I was and who I was becoming. It started small. Instead of journaling in my native language, I began writing in English. Somehow it felt easier to say "I miss you" than to write it in my mother tongue. Maybe because English created a safe emotional distance. It softened the pain, like wrapping a wound in words that weren't fully mine. One evening, I realized something profound. Every time I described my sadness in English, it lost a bit of its weight. "I feel lonely" sounded gentler than the word I would have used back home. It's like the language gave me permission to feel without drowning. Psychologists call this linguistic detachment, the way using a second language can help us regulate emotions better. It's the brain's way of saying, "Let's heal, but slowly." That blew my mind. Maybe that's why I could finally talk about the breakup without crying, because English gave me space between me and my pain. Soon, the words that once terrified me began to comfort me. I'd whisper small mantras before sleeping. "I'm learning. I'm not lost. I'm enough." They weren't perfect sentences, but they carried truth, and that was enough. Learning a language is not just memorizing. It's metabolizing, letting the words enter your system until they become emotions, memories, choices. Until "I'm okay" stops being a phrase and starts being a heartbeat. The funny thing is, when I switched to English, I also stopped overthinking. Maybe because I didn't have enough words to complicate things. My sentences became simpler, but my life did too. Now, when I speak, I don't just use English to communicate, I use it to connect. Because sometimes another language doesn't just translate your thoughts, it translates your soul. And that, to me, is the real fluency, when words stop being grammar and start becoming grace. The science of slow listening. One morning, while riding my bike along the Copenhagen canals, I realized something strange. I could finally hear English differently. Not just as noise but as rhythm, like waves instead of bullets. It wasn't that people suddenly spoke slower. It was that I had learned to listen slower. We live in a world obsessed with speed. Fast learning. Fast results. Fast fluency. But our brains don't grow that way. The science of listening says your brain needs pauses, those small, invisible moments between sounds, to actually absorb meaning. It's not the hearing that makes you understand. It's the silence between the words. Think about music. A song without pauses is just noise. Language works the same. When I stopped rushing to translate every sentence, when I let the words breathe, something clicked. My brain stopped panicking and started hearing. There's a term for this. Deep listening. Psychologists describe it as the ability to listen with full attention, not just to sounds but to emotions, tone, and rhythm. This is how native speakers connect naturally, without overthinking. So I made it a practice. Every night I'd play a podcast or a short story in English, not to study but to bathe in the language. I'd close my eyes, focus on how each phrase felt instead of what it meant. Sometimes I even repeated the same sentence 10 times slowly until it became music. And here's the funny part, my speaking improved too. Because the brain learns to speak the same way it learns to listen. Through rhythm, repetition, and rest. We often think studying harder means pushing more. But learning languages is like planting seeds. The growth happens in the quiet. When I finally realized that, I stopped chasing speed. I let go of the need to catch up to native speakers. Instead, I learned to walk beside the language one patient step at a time. Now, when I talk to people, I don't rush to respond. I listen fully, slowly, like the world has time again. Because maybe real understanding doesn't come from talking faster, but from learning how to pause beautifully. Choosing closure, not waiting for it. For months, I waited for another message. Something, anything, to explain why it ended. But silence became my only reply. I checked my phone every morning, reread the old words like a ritual, hoping they might change if I looked hard enough. They never did. And then one evening, while walking through the cold streets of Copenhagen, I had a thought so simple it felt like lightning. What if closure isn't something you get, but something you choose? That sentence stopped me in my tracks. Because I had been waiting for permission to move on, waiting for him to give me peace. As if healing was his gift to hand out. But healing, I realized, is an inside job. Learning English had quietly taught me this. Every time I stumbled over a word, I had two choices. Freeze and feel stupid, or breathe and try again. Closure works the same way. You either keep repeating the pain, or you learn a new way to say goodbye. So I started rewriting my story literally in English. I opened a blank page and wrote, "He didn't say goodbye, so I will." I described what I wished he had said, then what I needed to hear. And as I wrote, my hands stopped shaking. For the first time, my own voice felt louder than the silence. That's when I understood. Closure isn't about deleting someone from your phone. It's about rewriting the meaning of what happened. You don't need their message. You need your own sentence to end the story. There's even science behind it. Psychologists call it cognitive reappraisal. It means changing the emotional story you tell yourself. When you rewrite pain, your brain rewires the memory. You don't erase it, you just remove its sting. So I stopped waiting. I stopped refreshing. I stopped hoping he'd text me one more time, because I already had the message I needed. My OWI in English, the word closure sounds final, like a door slamming shut. But to me it now means something softer, a window opening. And through that window I finally breathed again, finding my voice again. It happened quietly, not in some dramatic moment of revelation, but in the middle of an ordinary morning. I was recording myself reading an English short story like I always did. My voice cracked a little, but this time I didn't stop. I kept reading. And somewhere between those imperfect words I realized I wasn't just practicing English anymore. I was telling my story. I had spent so long afraid of sounding wrong that I forgot what my voice could sound like when it was free. The more I spoke, the lighter I felt. My sentences weren't perfect, but they were mine. They carried laughter, mistakes, and the echoes of everything I'd survived. Sometimes I still think about that last message. It used to define me, the silence, the ache, the unfinished ending. But now it's just a chapter. Because finding your voice again doesn't mean erasing the pain. It means turning it into something worth saying. Living in Denmark taught me that fluency isn't just about pronunciation or grammar. It's about honesty, the courage to speak even when your heart still trembles. It's about using your second language not to impress but to express. Now, when I record my English videos, I smile at my accent. I let my pauses breathe. I speak slowly, clearly, like I'm talking to the version of me who once thought she'd never be enough. Because maybe she's still listening. So if you're out there, staring at your phone, afraid to start, afraid to speak, remember this: your voice doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. It just needs to be yours. And maybe one day you'll realize the same thing I did, that the real message you were waiting for was never on your phone. It was always inside you, waiting for you to say it out loud. Hi, I'm still here. And I'm still learning. That's how closure sounds when you finally find your voice.